We hope you enjoy your different talk and workshop before. Now it's a great pleasure for us to introduce you the last speaker of this morning. And so that, I will let Marine introduce him because she's so exciting and again to have a talk with him.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you, Stefan. Yeah, I'm really exciting. I could tell you that he's given more than 500 talks, reaching more than 150,000 people all around the world. I could tell you also that he's a keynote speaker in some prestigious universities, as Berkeley in the States, Singularity U in Italy, QUT in Australia, and so on. But what I want to tell you now, and above all, is powerful, relevant, and very catchy speaker. And for sure, it will not you live indifferent. So you will understand maybe, but I'm a big fan of him. So now please give a round of applause to Patrick van der Pijl. Yeah, that's true. CEO of Business Model Inc.
Okay, I have 180 slides, but I have only one simple question. And that question is, where is value created? And you can ask this question on a business level, what I will address in the next 45 minutes. But you can also ask this on a personal level. You could talk to your partner tonight and say like, hey, what is actually the value you bring? It's a very interesting conversation. And you see that when you have something to offer and when you have clarity about those conversations, you can almost predict in business where value will be next. So so you see that value then yesterday is different than it is today as it will be tomorrow. And I am born and raised in a 6 feet under family. So my holiday job was working in the funeral home of my daddy. And you see that yesterday it was more like, oh, the slides are a bit squeezed, so it should be regulated. It was regulated because my father was in the exam commission and he only allowed 20 people to be part of getting their diploma. So they could establish their company and they could be in business. But today, like, it's an easy start when we go on Facebook, we open a web page and we can start a funeral home and we are in business. And I believe in the tomorrow, in the near future, it will be more a platform business model where we are more easily connected and that we can offer these services just by an instant. So that means that like a lot of companies that you monitor will go through the same pattern. And what I've seen is that when you look at what your business model looks right now, the way you add value, will be then very different when you look at the edge of innovation. And that means that you as a company need to make a shift towards adding a different value than you are adding today. So on the one hand, it is about shift, but on the one hand, it's about technology. I'm not going to dive deep, but we know all these things like artificial intelligence, augmented reality, blockchain, robotics, Internet of Things, and so on. That actually the technology fosters us to experience things in a complete different way. But when you look at the way we shift is normally we had to hire these expensive guys, but now you can figure out everything yourself online, almost. Or mobility, you know, it's a hassle to have a car because you can get access, it's much different. And in shopping, you don't need to visit the stores because people want to have all these things extra right now. And then you think, yeah, but this is an example of Amazon Fresh. Yeah, that's right. But what you will see is in the end, they will also raise the bar for you as a company to also perform at the same level. Because if the guys deliver within 30 minutes, then they expect you to do the same. Or even with food boxes that you just need to just put the ingredients together. And then in food production, it's shifting more towards vegetarian stuff. Something like the Impossible Burger. Anyone who tried it? Impossible Burger? No, it's fully vegetarian. So if you're gonna visit California, then make sure you eat it because it's an amazing experience. And then school education is gonna be different from studying anywhere. But then personal mobility, we go in a little bit deeper into platform models. And then the 9 to 5, it's shifting more towards distribution models. And they can even shop that in your car. You know what is interesting? In the past, we looked at China in a complete different fashion because it said, yeah, everybody is copying stuff from us in China. But actually, we should now do it the other way around. Because what we see from China is fascinating. Because this is the Hema store, not to be compared with the local brand here, but it's a brand from Alibaba. And what we see is they deliver within 5 kilometers every product you would like to have. And within 30 minutes. And what do you think is the #1 product that they ship? Sorry? Alcohol. Almost. Condoms. Exactly. How do you know? Yeah, so you see that's fascinating. And what we learn actually is that all this stuff, then the question is, what is the added value? Because maybe it's more about the instant need that we have as consumers. Still, you need to wait 30 minutes for the condom to come. Okay, then the other thing is when you look at WeChat, that's the communication platform. But what is different from stuff that we have like WhatsApp is that everything is organized within the app. So we don't have other apps, everything is within the app. And the app understands your context, and based on the context, you get services like buy a train ticket or something else. Or if you're in a bad situation at home, you can click this button and you can divorce. So this instant need that's emerging, and then you see that this is all about mini programs. So a lot of companies are not designing apps anymore, but they make mini programs just to be part of the app because people only have access to WeChat. So what you see is that goodbye to the apps and welcome to contextual services. The other thing what I would like to show is that every time when you look at customer needs, then we see that the needs are still the same, but behavior is changing. So this is a research from DesignWorks from BMW, and they said like one thing is customer needs is all about keeping it very simple. So the more simple, the easier it is for people to buy and to have. The other one is minimized destruction. I see that you are minimized destructions. That's wrong. But there's so much offer that is very hard to collect. So it needs to be like more on minimized distractions. And the other thing is around flexibility. We just want to move between different products, services. And on the other hand, it also needs to be smooth, because otherwise we lose interest if this doesn't work. And then you see that there are a couple of shifts are happening in business models. Who is familiar with the business model canvas? Yeah, so I published this book 10 years ago together with Alex Osterwalder, and this is all around a notion of how you can understand how value is created. And every time we have discussions with different companies, once you get this one out, then that brings clarity to the discussion. So I will show you different models, what this looks like. So the question is, what is your next business model going to look like? So I see now 6 big shifts. One is from linear to exponential. One is from analog to digital. One is from pipeline to platform. One from shareholder to stakeholder. And one from singular to circular. And one from products to services. So I will show you a few. I'm curious what you think. So the question is still, where is value created? And this is the tool that we're going to use. So that means on the right-hand side, I want to know what, who the customers are. In the middle, it's about what is the value we offer, or what is the job we get solved. What channels we use, what kind of relationship. And then how do we make money? So that's all about the revenue streams on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side is how the model comes together. So what kind of resources you need, what activities, what key partners, and what cost structure. And you can map any idea or concept from, we're now mapping the international model of the European soccer teams, because we found this fascinating, except for last week, because I'm from Amsterdam, Ajax. And the other thing, you can look at this from a company perspective, so you'll see different examples. So we studied over 100 models, and when you look at the platform business model, it's interesting because a lot of concepts are shifting from a pipeline approach into a platform. So this is, for example, one of these things. If you look at this product, it's just a simple product. It's an electric step, nothing fancy. If we would be in the startup where we have this product to sell, we have a choice to offer this in a store. But these guys took a different way. So they thought, hey, we remember this, and this was not about the product, but it was also, I think, difficult. Let's see what it looked like. Again, one more time, yeah. Boom. So then you see that like it looks very interesting, but it never really took off. And what I like, that is not about the product, but it's more about the business model. So when you look at Lime, they operate as a platform because of IoT, Internet of Things. So all these different step bikes, they are connected. So when you would like to use it, this is where I use it in Brussels, and then you go find this step, it's all over the place, and then you activate this, and then you can drive it, and then they keep track of your driving experience, and then they charge you for that. And the question is, where is the platform in this model? So on the one hand, it is about you and me. We take the step from A to B. We use an app. It's very fun to do. And then we pay a fee based on time and distance. And then they manage the platform. But when you talk about the platform, there's also another customer segment in there that helps you in this model. So what do you think this question mark is about? Where is the other side of the platform? Here you go. So how do you charge your steps? So this is a student, and they pick up all the steps, and they go to their student home, and they elevate the bill of the electricity because they plug them in, and then they again put them out on the streets. And what is interesting about that, this is the other interface of the app, where if your name is Alex, you can see how many services you delivered. You can see what kind of steps you can pick up, and here's how you can make money. So as a company of Lime, you don't need to hire all these people. You just make the connection between supply and demand. So that means the notion of platform business models is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. So let me go one step deeper. So here you see the Lime charges. They have an income opportunity, and they get a fee for each charge. It's around €5. So you see that they create another income opportunity for people who would like to work as a Lime charger. Then next, I would like to go one step deeper into platform business models so you get a better understanding, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about these platforms. So one is, if you look at such platform, there's always a producer side and there's a consumer side. It doesn't necessarily need to be B2C, but there's some party that produces something on the platform and the other one is consuming. And what often happens is that when they design a technical platform, that they're gonna design the consumer side and the producer side, which is wrong, and I will show you why. So if you look at Uber, then there are two segments. So it's you and me, and it's the driver. So you and me, we get easy order and pick up. We know exactly what we need to pay up front. And also we can review the driver, and we can leave the cab without leaving cash or something like that. So you see 4 very clear benefits on the platform. But when you go to the driver, every time I use Uber, I ask why they are driving Uber, because there's a lot of bad press about drivers because they say the income is too low. But if you ask them, they say like, well, I like it because it's an income opportunity and I can drive and I don't need to wait. So when I was in Rotterdam, there was a guy of 65 years old. He said, Patrick, I'm a cab driver for 40 years. for 30 years I've been waiting in my cab, and that's not what I like to do. So for them, they can keep on driving. The other thing for them is also easy to pick up, so they don't need to wait for these drunk UK tourists who come to Amsterdam and wait for the cab to pick them up. And the other thing, they can review you too. So he said, if you put blinds on my eyes, then I can tell you exactly if this is a regular customer or an Uber customer, because they are more nice, the Uber customers. And then on Sunday, they don't need to do administration, because this is what Uber does for them. So they see also 4 clear benefits, and that's why they are driver in the Uber app or system. And what do we learn from platforms? One thing is crucial, is it is very different from a pipeline model. So here, if this would be a pipeline, the drivers would be in resources, and it would be a huge cost base to operate a taxi model. So we know, based on calculations, that if you would operate a taxi company today, you need at least 30 to 50 cars to make a little bit of profit. And in this model, you see that the drivers are part of the business model, and they will also get a fee. So the only thing what Uber does is connect them. But what is important how this connection happens is that it's based on a very clear value trigger. So that means the value trigger is that you know very easily what it will cost you and when you are taken to your destination. So if you think of any platform model to design, it needs to be so stupid simple that it brings a lot of people to the platform, because otherwise, if there's no volume, the platform is not going to grow. So that's one important note. The other thing is, when you once run a platform, it will bring new customers by itself. So this is my grandmother, and she would never ever take the cab, but right now it's 40% cheaper than an average cab. So because it's cheaper, you will get new customer segments to the platform. And on the other side, we see drivers. If you have a kid of 18 years old, you better be careful if they want to borrow your car, because they might operate as an Uber driver. And for them, they would never ever be a cab driver, but now, because it's so easy to do, they show up as a cab driver. So you see 2 customer segments that starts to grow by itself. And that's what we call the network effect. So every time you see a platform, that's interesting to understand. And then what happens is platforms create other platforms. So besides, if you look at Wikipedia, Uber created many platforms, and a lot of them are not successful. But Uber Eats is another one, and that operates slightly different. So this is Uber Eats. Is this something that you are using at the moment, Uber Eats? Yeah. So what you see is that if you look at the business model, we saw before the cab driver and you and me, but now there's also a restaurant. And what is the benefit, the value for a restaurant? More clients. And these restaurants are willing to pay 20 to 30% for these services. And you know why? Because there was one case study of a New York restaurant, and then the guy said, yeah, I just activated my account on Uber Eats, and all of a sudden for 3 weeks, I was working day and night to supply all the demand from Uber Eats. So for them, it's another channel that you could normally never have access to. So this value creation of this model is very different. So here you see you and me, restaurants and drivers. So this is a triple-sided business model, where Uber Cab is a double-sided model. And last year in November, there was a conference in Amsterdam about the use space, and it's the unmanned space from 0 meters to 150 meters, where drones can operate. And a lot of companies will try to figure out, what are we going to transport? Is it pizzas? Is it emergency services? They had no idea. And then Uber came on stage and they were very clear. They said, what we know is that these drones are going to operate from large office buildings to other office buildings. They figured out already, because of analyzing data in Manhattan, figuring out what kind of food was shipped, what kind of transport of people through Uber. So they predict what's going to happen with these kind of services. And they could tell you exactly what would be the price to be shipped from one office building to the other. What is interesting in this conversation, and I don't know, is you and me is easy to commute again, and then we have pilots who have an income opportunity. I hope it's not your son of 18 years old who's going to be a pilot. But then the fleet management company, I'm not sure if Uber will raise enough money to operate this by themselves, or that maybe a company like Airbus or Boeing is going to step in. So this is what we learned from platform models, is every time the same pattern, but because of technology, we are much easier capable to connect these people on the right way. But it needs to be very, very simple. So that's the lessons of platform business models. Another one, what I see, is a shift from analog to digital. It's not new for you guys. But what I like about this notion is that they design the services in a complete different way. So this is a Dutch company. It's soon going to get to France as well, I'm sure. But what they do is they deliver services, and they are competing with the established supermarkets. And the way they do that is through an easy app. And that's nothing new, but this app is exactly designed for you to be very easy and comfortable. So you can just pick out the orders and you know exactly when they're going to deliver that to your door. And they don't have supermarkets because they have distribution centers. And that's why they're also cheaper than the established supermarkets, because these distribution centers are outside the city. And this is similar for Amazon Foods. And therefore, they guarantee that they don't charge you for delivery, but at the same time, they have the lowest prices, which is kind of pretty unusual. The other thing is what they understand is that these drivers are very important. So these are the ideal son-in-law. So you see a lot of selfies on the web where people take pictures with them. And the question is, okay, so how do they do that in their business model, that they do not charge for delivery? Well, I was drawing this in the picture. Clear? So here you see that we cross out the supermarket, but because the demand is driven by the app, then these orders from the app are directly shipped through the distribution center and through the suppliers, and then that means that they have 70% less waste in their distribution center, because it's real-time, customer-driven information. So there's no stock sitting somewhere in this value chain. And that makes it very interesting. And they can then already predict, based on this client data, like what is the next delivery and when are specific products required. So comparing a traditional supermarket with an online supermarket is a very different way of thinking. Then what I like is when you look at artificial intelligence, you also see that models are going to change. So this is Erik Ginjaar, and he's happy, as you can see. But he said, I don't want in my hotel, I don't want any overhead. I want people to spend time with guests. So he said it's difficult because we get 10,000 emails every month asking for conference rooms and bedrooms and food and beverage. It costs you like 1.5 hours to put the proposal together. So what he did, he organized an algorithm called Pijl, and Pijl can propose real-time a proposal, because it's looking into the databases and takes note of 7 variables in the revenue model. But when they implemented this, people didn't believe that this was a real proposal, so they delayed it for 30 minutes. So can you imagine, you have a real-time proposal system, you delay it for 30 minutes, but what is the result in the business model? This is just a very simple business model of a hotel. But what happened is, now their customer satisfaction is much higher, they can write the right proposal, they win a lot of time, and they have a knowledge database in their resources that sits there as an algorithm who understands exactly how to write the right proposals at the right point in time. And they have a pipeline of 90 million revenue. They have actual revenue of 45 million. but right now, 4 to 6% increase. So they make a lot of money, a lot of value, because they exactly know how and what kind of proposals people want. And there was another one on AI, and then if you're an entrepreneur, if you want a loan, this was in my case because this is my office building, and I wanted to build something new. And then I had a conversation with our bank, ING Bank, and then they said, oh, that looks very good because you have a lot of information and you don't have any loan at all, so that's gonna be fine. And then weeks passed, and I got nervous. I thought like, maybe it's not gonna happen. And I was afraid that I would not get the loan. So then it took me too much time, so I went to see New 10, and they have an algorithm. So you ask for 500,000 euros, and you upload your bank account information, your company bank account information, and then in 15 minutes you get the response. So they said, okay, Patrick, that's easy. You can get the loan. And I was like, wow. So I uploaded my passport picture, approved €1 on my bank account, and then they said like, hey, Patrick, you can live your entrepreneurial dream. If you push this button, the next day the money will be in the bank. And it was in the bank. And I was like, wow. So what I wanted to show here is when you look at a digital perspective, then this information is much faster. And what you see is that the value is not in the whole process that gives you headaches, but the value is in instant delivery of that what you need as an entrepreneur. So now this is the Creative Village in Amsterdam. So if you guys are in Amsterdam, just walk by, like here's where we host our strategy sessions. And this one is the one that fascinates me most. So when you look at a linear business model, when you would like to make the shifts from products to services, that happened actually in the late 90s. So these guys, Mark and Reed, they wanted to come up with a new business model, not depending on the local video stores, but they want to do that online. However, this was too expensive to ship, so they started to do this with DVDs. And when you look at the business model back in 1998, it was just like a simple product, like 925 DVDs they started with, do mail order, either it would be rented or sold, and that's it. And what was interesting at that point in time, this is only one DVD and it represents a specific revenue. So it's a linear business model. And what happened is they said, and that's interesting when you want to shift from a product to a service, you have to have a different mindset than everybody else in the industry. So they said, what we believe is that there's a much bigger market out there. We're going to ask for a flat fee, like a subscription model. Blockbuster said that's stupid because everybody, we can make a lot of money with the late returns. So what happened is they started this, and when they introduced the subscription, they right away rented out 35,000 videos. So this was a huge success. So they believed that the market was much bigger by not offering the product, but the service. And then they figured out what is the next recommendation, what would the next video that you would hire? And again, they said like, we're not the best company ourselves to design the algorithm, we're going to ask a startup company. And this startup company made a better algorithm and then won the competition, €1 million or $1 million. And when video on demand was introduced, that was interesting in the business model because they didn't ship the movies anymore, but it was live streaming, video on demand, and they started to develop data and algorithms. And that was interesting in that model because nobody in the whole broadcasting industry had real-time information about what people like, what they don't like. And then this guy stepped up, Kevin Spacey, and he's now known for something else, but in this model, he was known for a very breakthrough thinker when it comes to not linear thinking. So he said, I have a new format that's all about politics, and he said, I want to bring that to the screen. But then not to this screen, where all the business models on advertising are sitting. He said, I believe we can do it in a different way. So we're going to do it online, and then we're going to supply everything at the same time. And then people said, like, yeah, it's the worst idea ever. That's what broadcasters said. And he said, you know, it's not about this specific weekly format. It's about what people like. So the device and the length are irrelevant. What people want is stories from Frank Underwood, but done for affordable price. So he had a clear vision of what people really want and what they were willing to pay for. And when they introduced this format, Netflix said, yeah, right, we're going to do this because we know what kind of politics people are interested in. We know the actors, etc. So again, this was a breakthrough in thinking. And right now, this is what the business model of Netflix looks like. And you could say that they are growing at a very, very fast rate. So let's test this in the room. Like, how many people had Netflix 4 years ago? And how many today? Yeah, it's kind of big. So this is how we visualize this. So one is through post-it notes, oops, and the other one is through a visual. And then we see now that these products are coming more, shifts are coming more and more. So this is Dirk. He's on the left-hand side, and he's a student. And he founded the company called Swap Bike, Swap Fiets in the Netherlands. So what is this Swap Fiets about? He said, what is his problem? He said, if my tire is flat, then my whole social life is gone. Because I can't go drinking with my friends, I need to go to college, I need to go make money with a part-time job. And then the question is, if this happens, what is the solution for him? So he said, first is panic, but then what is the solution? Well, he can go to the bike repair shop, but actually this bike repair shop does not solve his problem because they only have time next week. And once you go to the repair shop, they repair your lights and something else, and not the stuff that you want to get repaired. So he said, that's a hassle. So he said, what I want is, I want to bike, and I want to be able to bike. So what he started to offer, a business model where you have access to a bike, and you pay a monthly subscription. So what you see in the business model here is that he said, we focus on cities, and then you can order a bike, and we're going to make sure you have one. And if it's broken, you push the button on the app, we're going to come with the car, and we're going to swap the bike. And then what you pay is this subscription, this abonnement is subscription, is the Dutch model, and we don't sell the bikes anymore. And then when I was on stage with him, and then asked somebody in the audience said like, yeah, but if you pay 12 months for a subscription, then you have a second-hand bike. And then he said, but yeah, you don't get it. Because this is not what people want. What people want is that a bike that works. And that's what they're willing to pay for. And then afterwards I said like, hey, who would now be interested in the bike? And then nobody raised his hand. And he said, I know, because only when people consider a different bike, then they will swap to this concept. And otherwise, they don't. So what I find interesting is that in this notion of moving from products to services, the features of the bike or the brand is not that important anymore. Because people just think like, yeah, I just want a bike. And if you would think beforehand that people would drive around with a blue tire, you would think like nobody would ever do that. But people like it. It was built on the notion of Delft is a city in the Netherlands. And Delft's blue is what Delft is known for the porcelain and stuff. So they first wanted to do 2 blue tires, but then they were stuck with a lot of black leftover tires. So they only have 1. So this is the model. They started with €8 a month, and now they charge 15, 16 euros. So you see that this is really something else. And then for the business model, you need to figure out who is going to pay for your storage, because the lifetime of your product to build it from scratch is long, but even to get it financed, then the cycle becomes longer. So now they're looking into banks if they're willing to do that. So what we see is that when you look at the shift, that's the small movement towards where value is created. And when you look at the services shift, it depends on you as a company need to have a vision that you believe that this is how value is created. You saw that with Kevin Spacey. And you also saw that with Dirk, because otherwise it's not going to happen. So you have to believe that value is created differently. Then the other one you see is not about the product or selling the product. It's about the job to be done or the problem you solve. And the problem for the student you solve is very different from having a bike in the first place. And Then you move away from more a product focus. So this is a business model that's more product focused, like low quality products, one-time sale, production facilities, product marketing, not so many key partners, but you control the supply chain, and you go to mass market or businesses. But what I find more interesting, if you look at the shift of the model, then you see within those boxes how this is shifting. So we see that on the relationship, you don't have a one-time transaction, you have a long-term relationship, and it requires something different from you as a company. In the channels, you have your own channel, not maybe through retail channels anymore. When you look at revenue, it's not for one-time usage, but it's more like a subscription or a fee. And for this specific services, you see that it's an environmental impact because we're not going to dispose those bikes anymore, but we're going to keep them in the loop. And then it's from production facilities more towards data, production marketing to fleet management. And then here you need to figure out with what kind of partners you can design this model, because you can't do this yourself anymore. So you see that on the one hand a small shift, but that means that you as a company need to operate very differently. So you see that that's difficult for companies, because if you are a company called Samsung, then they were offering services to Schiphol. They would only sell the screens. And then somebody stepped up and said, like, why don't we ask for display as a service? Because our job is to show travel information to travelers and advertising for advertisers also to travelers. But if you would ask Samsung to offer these services, they're too much addicted to their own model. They just want to sell this. So you see now that new companies like Econocom, they are stepping up to finance this model, and this is also a big opportunity for banks. So what you see in this pattern is that these are the things that we see. So you need to much more invest in user experience, it's recurring revenue, you create a love relationship, it's the true value, it's the quality of products, and activities to create availability. Those are much more important compared to a product focus. So to summarize, what I see is one simple question is, where is value created? And that's every time very different. And what I see, because of technology, our behavior is changing. So we don't want to plan stuff anymore. We want stuff instantly. And instantly our service, that will service our needs. And then the question is, what kind of products can we just turn into maybe services, or make much more and easier available through platforms, for example. And what you can see is when you learn from other business models, you see that those patterns, what does that mean for your company? So you need to design your next business model. And the question is also, when value is created, you can also look into different horizons. So you could say, what would the current business model life cycle look like when we improve our process and a little bit more features? But what it would look like if we search for complete business model innovation? So you could say that this is more product focused, this is more services, and then the question, what would be the next? So when you do business model innovation, you just need to play on these three different levels. And then the question, how is value created? Then we see that partners and ecosystems are here to stay. And what do I mean is, we see more and more complete different companies cooperating because they can't do this themselves anymore. And this is Peter Schwarzbauer. He's responsible for BMW globally for innovation. And he said, if we want to be the partner in this autonomous driving, then we don't have all the data ourselves to make that possible. So we need to cooperate with Toyota. We need to cooperate with different operating systems. So he said, the fact that we could do everything ourselves is not going to happen in the near future anymore. So here you see also co-innovation with the last mile of distribution, where Audi and Airbus are going to work together. So the question is, would they have clients soon? I'm not sure. And what is important to note is, if you organize innovation, then you need to understand where you do that. So I drew this on a coaster, and you see that a lot of people are operating in a current company. So if this would be your existing company, you know your customers, you know your value proposition, your products, and what they're willing to pay for. And all we do is optimization and execution. But if you're going to search for a new model, like Kevin Spacey did or Dirk de Bruin from Swapfiets, then you need to operate on the left-hand side, because a startup is all about searching. So you need to search for customers, search for a value proposition, and what people are willing to pay for. So ING Bank, Ralph Hamers, the CEO, he said, this is our DNA of our company. So we need to understand when to move to the left and when to move to the right. And what I see is that we had our traditional MBA programs, and that's on the right-hand side is Master of Business Administration. But then on the left-hand side, it's similar, it's MBA, but it's Master of Business Ambiguity. So it's dealing with uncertainty, and it's a complete different fashion. So you could say on the right-hand side we have managers, and on the left-hand side we have designers. So last stuff is, this is from Peter Hinson, and it's always what I like, because when you look at big companies, the way they run their business is not so much about the future, because they're always focusing on the shit that they still need to solve today. So what would it look like if you can focus more on tomorrow, because that's what it should look like. And then what I liked is, I know Peter now for 3-4 years, and like 4 years ago he said like, yeah, it's going to change fast, we're going to do autonomous driving and electric cars. And now when I spoke to him last October, he said, it's going in baby steps. Because you and me as a consumer, it's very hard to change our behavior. And when you look at autonomous driving, to have this acceptance and all these electricity with batteries and so on, it's going step by step by step. So this was my keynote. If you are nice to Marina, then you can get the keynote, because she can send it to you. We can make that work? Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. It was really inspiring and catching. You know I'm a fan, so you understand now why. We have one question for now. And what about ecology? Some of this new model, do they care about that? We may have a special place for sustainability in the business model pattern. Wow.
Yeah, so on the one hand, when you look at business models, how they operate in a technical way, we see that it's more about ecosystems. So we are studying 150 models. We're going to publish a book about business model shift in fall. But if you study all these models, what you see is not about value proposition, it's about value systems. It's not about these linear models, it's about flowing all together. So we see now, when you think of the notion of ecosystem on a technical way, I see that it's becoming more and more companies that work together and help each other out and need to figure out how they can add value as a total. That's one thing. The other thing is, when you look at the ecology, more like sustainable business models, that's what we talk about in the shift of the circular business models. And when I talked about this shift with my publisher in the US, with Wiley, then he said, should you really include this in the book? Because in the US, circular stuff is so not popular. Can you imagine? So we want to put that in there. And when you look at sustainable business models, we see 5 different patterns. So it's very interesting to look into that. But then Bas from Fairphone, that's the phone that you can modify and change yourself. You don't need to throw it away. He said what we should do is we should stop sell products. If we would forbid to sell products, then we are stuck with sharing and services. And that's the way to think more about an ecological, responsible way of resources, using resources. And that's what I see, it's popping up more and more. So there was another model that looks into immunotherapy with snails. And snails, those snails only grow in the California Bay. And this company, what is monitoring those, they don't take out the snails and they produce it, but they manage the ecology and the ecosystem, so that's a sustainable model. So I think ecological business models is a whole nother chapter, but if you look at me online, then I will post like research on those models, so every now and then. But I think that's really the future, and the the pattern of products to services is one of that models. No more questions?
You were so captivated by Patrick, but no need, no time to get some question. But if you have, we can give you the micro to share more with Patrick. No need.
I think everything was clear.
Sure. But before you finish, we would like to make a selfie with all of us.
Yeah, why not? Yes.
So let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do a selfie for my mom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
you.
Patrick. Thank you.